It's fine either way. Okay. What would you
They drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took them in.
All right, these are like shutdown days. So let's go ahead. Online people, I'm sure there's a whole bunch more of you than are in person. So you sing out, because the in-person people are going to have to really sing this. Let's go ahead and put the slides up. So welcome to your church. And online people, welcome to you as well. We're joking because it's foggy. If you're watching this later, it's foggy. And so we're going to have a close-knit group, which is good because we're doing fire later. So this will be a good test run for us. I don't have much of a welcome, except I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we can be together. We made it through a lot of stuff these last months. I should let you know there is supposed to be a Christmas tree up. Through a weird series of communications, the tree has been burned, not in the sanctuary, but because we are still in Christmas time. Christmas ends on January 6th. But here we are. All of this will be reverted to regular times next Sunday. So I wanted to tell you a story of it's one I heard a long time ago. And it comes out of the Buddhist tradition. And it's about these two male monks who both made a vow to never touch a woman. And the two monks were walking. And as they were walking, they saw a woman who was struggling to cross a river. And the older, taller monk asked the woman permission and then picked her up and carried her across. And then came back, and the two monks kept walking. And they walked for a number of hours. And later, the younger monk said to the older monk, "I'm sorry, I can't let this go. We took a vow not to ever touch a woman. And yet here you are, having touched a woman to carry her across the river." And the older monk said, "That is true. But I put her down hours ago. You have been carrying her ever since."
The sharing of stones ritual here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is a time in our service where we take pause to come forth to share stones to honor the joy and sorrows of our lives with this community. As always, visitors are always welcome to take part in this ritual. Before we begin, of particular note for this week's stone sharing, will share a stone honoring the passing of a long-time member of the church. This stone is being shared for longtime member Rosemary Haney, who passed away suddenly on December 21st, even after living with dementia for some time. Those who would like to come forth to take part in the ritual, please come forth lining along the east or west walls of the sanctuary. Our sharing of stones ritual begins. Chalice lighting, let us say together our chalice lighting words. With hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
So welcome to our first worship service of the new year. Only every handful of years does this happen. I've actually did the math. It's not every 6 years. It kind of alternates. So it was in, since you wanted to know, 2004, 2011, 2015 or 16 now, and then I think we've got a break for like 15 years. So for most of you, you don't care, but for those of us who work this, work Sundays, we're good for a while now.
Amen.
At the end of this service, we are going to burn. You have two options of paper to burn. So we provided you either flash paper or regular paper. If you did not get it, please let us know. Melanie, does anyone need paper? All right. So we got 4 papers. It's out on the usher. Oh, Charles. Usher, yeah. Online people, get your paper at home. Charles is going to go hand out. The flash paper burns much quicker and kind of scary. This one burns much slower, but we're going to have water over there. So I wanted you to know that both are available. What I want you to do is also not to write down what you want to let go of, but he's coming with the paper. But to just doodle over this hour. Trust your hands to know what you're supposed to draw, not necessarily to draw what you're going to get rid of, but just whatever you draw, you will get rid of. Does that make sense? So online people, if you could go ahead and get a candle ready and your thing to write with, that would be great. We've been doing this, by the way, on the first Sunday of the year for a long, long time, as long as I can remember. But this is the first time I think, or recently we've been bringing it inside. We used to do it outside. So we're going to find out. Our new worship associate, Melanie Mayu, is on fire extinguisher duty. So here's how today's service is going to be structured. We're going to, first thing you should know, I thought that we should do a lot of singing today. So we do a thing every month where we pick like a theme song for the month, sort of to build tradition, to get you more comfortable with some hymns and to help sort of set the tone for particular liturgical seasons. So we went through and we picked half of the hymns from last year's themes that we're going to do for this service. We left out Jacob's Ladder, One More Step, How Could Anyone Ever Tell You, Lift Every Voice and Sing, and Joy Comes Back, only because of logistical reasons, but the other 6 are in here. We also had a tradition in this church of this Sunday usually being the Requiem service. This originated back when this was a one-minister church, and the Guild had to create a service every single month. And what they did on the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, or in this case, Christmas and New Year's, is they would pick a famous person who died that had touched them in some particular way. And then each member of the Guild would give a little homilet, I suppose, on that person. Over time it built, then they started taking all of the different people who died and lumping them into categories and trying to pick a theme for the year, and they would put together a slideshow of everyone who died, and they would bring in, it was actually a really beautiful and almost morbid process. Every month when the Guild would meet, they would get excited to find out who was added to the list, because that meant we got to use their music or their poetry or their art in the service. And over time, it just got so big and complicated that right now, since our church is in the rebuilding and reforming stages, it was too much to ask the Guild to do. So a lot of that, I'm not saying it's not coming back, we just haven't done discernment on it yet. But a lot of that work that you would normally do is going to be done within this service. And so with that, we are going to shift into the offering this morning. And we're going to share the whole month with Dialogues on Race, which is a phenomenal organization that has been in Baton Rouge doing racially integrated work on understanding the systems of institutional racism. Now, we're going to split for the whole month with Dialogues on Race, half with us, half with them. Problem is, this Sunday is probably not going to give them as much, unless you all each gave them like $50,000, and then we'd be set. Online people, you can go right to the website and give. So I'll ask you to give very generously, as this morning's offering is gratefully given and received.
I knew a man who had printed on his stationery this proverb: "Nothing is settled, everything matters." It established a certain ambiance for reading his letters, as if to say, what you're about to read is to be taken seriously, but is not final.
I remember him and his proverbs sometimes, especially when it seems impossible to change the world or myself in any significant way. Times like the beginning of New Year's.
Sorry, Jim, I say. It's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made, losses have been suffered, there has been growth and decay, there have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether during this year one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident, but now is settled.
One day this year, I was present when someone needed me. Another day, I was busy doing something else when I was needed. One day, I said something to a friend that injured our relationship. Another day, I said something that enabled a person to see life in a new way. The best and worst of those days is now written. All of my tears of joy or sorrow cannot erase it.
If I stay with my meditation long enough, the reply comes. Robbie, says Jim, you have misunderstood the proverb. It is true that you cannot escape consequences of your actions or the chances of the world. But what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be.
The meaning of a life is not contained within one act, or one day, or 1 year. As long as you are alive, the story of your life is still being told, and the meaning is still open. As long as there is life in the world, the story of the world is still being told. What is done, but nothing is settled.
And if nothing is settled, then everything matters. Every choice, every act in the new year matters. Every word, every deed is making the meaning of your life and telling the story of the world. Everything matters in the year coming, and more importantly, everything matters today. Please remain seated for our next hymn. No, please rise. Please rise.
Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. And your people are my people, your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. Where you lie, I will lie, beloved. Where you lie, I will lie. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. And your people are my people, your people are mine. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine.
I don't know if time has been like this for you, but time has been very slippery for me these past few years. Church, I have a hard time remembering which things happened which year. So let's do a quick poll. Did the insurrection happen this past year? No, it did not. That's my proof of concept, thank you. I couldn't remember. I mean, I could by the time I wrote this, but that's my proof of concept. Online people, they didn't know. So that's what you need to know. Church exists to help us sort through and create narratives when things happen. So I'd like to take this section of the service to actually sort through. So we're calling this service the year in review, but with a P in parentheses, so it's a year in preview. So we're going to review it in this section, then we'll preview what will happen in the next year, and then we'll burn some stuff. So we started off the year in 2022 flush with COVID. During that year, we hit 1 million American deaths, and that is an underestimate. When we did the Memorial Wall project, for those who remember at the first year, we were having debates about whether or not it was reasonable to buy 300 jars that could hold 1,000 stones each. 300,000 lives were the amount we thought we could never surpass. I remember we were going through so much COVID at the time because at the start of the year I had COVID. We did our last indoor worship service on Christmas Eve of 2020. For the 15 of you, you can go ahead and put the image up. For the 15 of you, on average, who showed up when we held outdoor worship, it was cold. Not always, but it was often cold. So we'd be right over here. Lee would be tucked away. You can't really see in the kitchen with all the sound stuff. There was one Sunday, it was so cold, and like a front was coming through, that the only people I think who showed up were the board and a handful of other people. The wind kept blowing down those music stands that would keep our sermons on. Like it was rough. All right, thank you, Roman. Around that same time we started celebrating, around the same time that we started celebrating Mardi Gras here, Russia invaded Ukraine. I remember that strange juxtaposition of the heartbreaking images of war combined with the unbridled celebration that became this past year's Mardi Gras. I still remember the feeling that I had when I went to that very first parade. Everyone seemed nervous and masked, and by the end, it was like a party for people who had survived the apocalypse. It was the strangest parade feeling I've ever experienced. Our church struggled with reopening. We reopened our doors to indoor worship around Mardi Gras time, and we dropped our mask requirement at some point during the summer. Even still, as is evidenced today, attendance took a long time to build back. Just so you know, for those of you who were not here Christmas Eve, we did 2 services. At the 5:30, we had 100 to 150 people, and at the 7:30, we had 200 to 300. Like it was, I was like, we are back. Like it felt good. But we still have not reached consistently before times numbers, which I think is a reflection of where everyone is. Our children who came before the pandemic, we have seen least of all. So last year we saw images of the beginning of time from a new telescope that was sent out into space. I don't think that's hyperbole. I think we literally did see images that are billions of years old. Around the same time, you had an installation service for me, and it was one that I did not expect to happen. Mostly because at that point in the pandemic, I had stopped looking forward to things and stopped preparing for things. So even though there was discussions of it, I forgot to invite anybody. So the only ministers who came were the ones who knew I was doing it and said, could we come? But we still had that event. And during that weekend, I invited a consultant from the UUA to talk to you, to help bring this church back together. And I thought we would have this great visioning Saturday. And we as a congregation were not ready. Most of the conversations that were had were just, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. I'm glad we're talking again kind of conversations. Also in April, after many months of work, this congregation voted to adopt the 8th principle. This is no small matter at a time of mass distraction, a time when things felt most uncertain and everything was barely forming, and it was hard to get anyone's attention on anything. You came together and did massive discernment. The 8th principle promises that we will work to dismantle systems of oppression we will dismantle oppression within ourselves and the institutions in which we are affiliated. And the most vocal critique that I heard from within this congregation is that we would pass it as a means to pat ourselves on the back and do nothing else. That has not been the case, but I appreciate that being the criticism. This effort was led by some of the members of this church and also an intern that we had. So do you know we've had 2 interns in the entire life of this church? The first one was now the Reverend Eric Poza in 2002, and Leslie Runnels, who just finished her internship in May. In June, our denomination held our first General Assembly since the shutdowns. So the first night that I went there, no one wore a mask. Like, everyone was kind of nervous. It was really hard to get this many people together. Like, they're all hanging out in hotels, no masks, chatting, talking. And then, do you remember this? Like, the first night, we heard someone had COVID. And then, over the duration of the week, it became like trying to dodge raindrops. Like, just more and more people got it. And we didn't know we were in the middle of a surge. Did you know we had a surge in the summer? Anyone? We did. Yeah. All right. One person knew. 2 people. The coroners knew we had a surge. So while most of your staff was at General Assembly, the Supreme Court decided to announce that forced birth would be the law of the land. And so this church hosted Planned Parenthood in the sanctuary to do a vigil and a rally, basically in favor of people. We brought in a guest minister, the Reverend Darcy Roque, the Sunday after that decision to talk. She spends her whole vocational ministry on reproductive justice, and she was here to minister to you. We spent the entire month of July raising money for Planned Parenthood. We gave them more than $1,000. This church continued to do our reopening. We started offering outdoor classes during middle hour. Also, we're not going to do middle hour today. It's just too foggy a day. Just go enjoy being with each other. Drink some coffee. But we started with outdoor classes during middle hour, and then we had indoor. And then once children were able to be vaccinated, we started indoor RE. And then when little children were able to be vaccinated, we started child care. The former president of our country, he had one of his homes raided by the FBI. The Justice Department, he was referred to the Justice Department for his role in an insurrection that happened 2 years ago. We had some of the most significant weather in terms of heat and cold that we have ever had. I could feel the anxiety in this congregation building like I had never felt before as hurricane season approached. And we did okay this year. There were so many mass shootings that I lost track. Children were killed in Uvalde. Black people were targeted in Buffalo, and LGBTQ people were targeted in Colorado. I had to look these up to remember. We as a people cannot become normalized to this violence. It should still stay disturbing and shocking. And it takes spiritual work to still keep an open heart to this kind of thing. The 2 most significant things that happened in this church's life, other than the reopening, the first is we said goodbye to our 3rd interim, who was also our first intern, in June. And then we said hello to Reverend Chris Long as our minister. This ended 4 or 5 years of ministerial transition and really started putting us on the path to growth again. And the other thing that happened that is the marker for me is we brought in a stewardship consultant, Mark Ewert, in August. I'm telling you this not because we need to raise money, which we do, not because pledging to this church is the primary focus of why we brought him. I bring it up because it was the first time that our people got back together and said very loudly what they loved about this church and what they didn't love. Do you all know the adage, if you want to ask someone for money, ask them what they think? And if you want to ask them what they think, ask them for money? You never heard that? Yeah. Go ahead. If I ask you right now for $50,000, you're going to tell me everything you don't like about this church or you love about this church. But what it did, the conversation that I was hoping we would have had in April that we weren't ready for, we had because someone came in and asked what you valued about this church so much to put your money behind. And those were some of the most enlivened conversations that I've heard in years. So that is the second marker. Our Congress decided to work again. They passed the first substantial gun legislation in 30 years. I don't know how this got lost in the shuffle, but they made gay marriage legal legislatively. I mean, that's... They sent billions of dollars to Louisiana for infrastructure aid, and they sent close to $200,000 to this church to help us recover from the pandemic. The people who murdered George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery were both found guilty. This year, we saw the deaths of a pope and a queen. Also, Bob and Louis from Sesame Street. For those who followed it for any of the 40 years of its... Anyway. Also, Thich Nhat Hanh, Coolio, and Angela Lansbury left us. This church was also a part of 9 memorial services. Not all of them were held in this building. Not all of them were members of this church. There are more deaths that happened in the year than I will name. Some are acknowledged, some did not. So this is the list in chronological order of the services that you as members of this congregation hosted. Josh Howley, Tom Haney, Marl Wayne Elsey, Webb Haymaker, Sarah Traylor, Michelle Crump Harrington, Barbara Stanfield, and M.K. Politz. As this church continues, and as all good religious communities do, we will experience more death. And we will make sure that every person who wants to can be memorialized and that their story can be told one more time. Every person deserves that. Right where you're seated, let's sing this next hymn.
Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, where are you? In the sky song, in the forest sounds your cry. What to give you, what to call you, what am I? Many drops are in the ocean deep and wide. Sunlight bounces off the ripples to the sky. What to give you, what to call you, who am I am empty, time flies from me, what is time? Dreams eternal, fears infernal haunt my heart. What to give you, what to call you, oh my God. Mother Spirit, Father Spirit, take our hearts. Take our breath and let our voices sing our parts. Take our hands and let us work to shape our art.
Would you join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see love and kindness and hope, that mystery named and unnamed. Whatever it is that holds us together, be with us on this day and help us to hold the memory of every ancestor that we have, whether we know their name or not. Every person who has helped make us who we are. all of those billions of years of work that have resulted in us. Help us to learn from our mistakes. Help us to heal our wounds. Help us to never forget those we love. Amen.
May we aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy, love right through. With thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary. We will not rest till the world is won. We will not rest till our work is done. Till the world is safe and free from fear. We will not rest till peace is here. Make us aware we are a sanctuary, each made holy, love right through. Make thanksgiving, we are a living sanctuary.
So Lee does not get enough credit. Sorry, Lee. That last hymn is two hymns that Lee decided should go together, and I think is brilliantly put together. Also, you may not know, online people you may not know, Roman Garcia is up in our sound booth. This is his first time doing this. And I didn't want to thank him in case there was a bunch of mistakes and then it would look like it was passive aggressive, but this has been flawless. So thank you. Also, and one of the other sound booth volunteers did this, came during the rehearsal yesterday to help him, and both of them were on that image of the 15 people who were in worship. So now the year in preview, where I'm going to predict all of the things that you will see in this upcoming year. So if you would like to prove that I am a flawed human being and get things wrong, this is your opportunity. My first prediction. This church will have many of the services that you expect and rely on. These include, but are not limited to, our King service, blues service, Pride, Gospel, Tenebrae, Easter, flower ceremony, solstice, and the whole slew of Christmas stuff, which is now 350-something days away. We will finally repair the tiles in the kitchen, which we were planning to do last year, but we just ran out of money because 3 air conditioners decided to die. Also, did you know we got a new roof? We paid like $2,000 for it. Yeah, so not because it was a cheap roof. Like, we had good insurance. We expect this church will grow. We are already planning to give you an ushers and welcomers training. We are planning for a revised path to membership. Prediction. This year, we will continue to see new and stupid cultural war battle lines being drawn. Actually, a better description is those with power will continue to try to find ways to amass more power at the expense of those most marginalized. And this church will continue to do its work internally and as an institution and among our members so that we can be there to help build the beloved community within here and out in the world. Standing room only social justice meetings, right? Yeah. One of our online people, one of our social justice people is right here, and she broke her wrist doing social justice work, which is not true. but it feels good to say. Prediction that 2023 will have more traumatic and extreme weather. We need look no further than a week ago for that. Louisiana will continue to be one of the hardest hit states in the country. Do you know that we had a member, she moved away, but she was a sociology professor who specialized in disasters. And Louisiana, according to her research, was the most disastered state in the country. This church will continue to be here for you if we experience that in this upcoming year. And I mean that logistically, spiritually, and theologically. We have a disaster relief team if something were to happen. We are going to continue to hold worship in every way that we can, before, when, and after it does. And theologically, we are going to bring in, Michael Dowd is a sort of nationally renowned theologian, and he focuses on how the religious story and the scientific story do not necessarily have to fight with each other. And he has spent a lot of the last 10 years really focusing on the theological implications of climate change and what does it mean for religious people. And so we're going to bring him in March. Another prediction, we're going to have our second installation service in as many years. We are going to install you April
23rd, 3:54 p.m.
April 23rd, 3:54 p.m. We've already arranged, I didn't do anything, I'm going to take the credit. I personally already arranged with no one else's help to have the person running to be the president, Reverend Kristen, to be the president of our association, Reverend Sophia Betancourt. Is she a doctor also?
Reverend Doctor.
Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt will be offering the sermon at that installation. There were two people the nominating committee nominated to run, but the other pulled their name out. And so unless something weird happens, she's likely to be the president. So you can say that you've heard the president of our association before she was president here at your church's installation. My prediction is the Supreme Court will release new and incredibly dangerous rulings, especially that will disenfranchise black people. There will probably be other foolishness that they are going to endorse. But remember, this is the same institution that passed Dred Scott, and that institution can reform itself. Yes. I predict that many of us will go to work and or school, and people will ask us what our religion is, and we will try to tell them, and they will look at us as if we made it up. A little tip, if you say I go to the church with a circle window, they usually stop asking. Because they know it, and this is a good, you moved to Louisiana. If you say Unitarian Universalist, they usually go, I don't know what that is. But if you say the church with the big circle window, they either think they're supposed to know or they know. Prediction, after 10 years of ministry, I will take my first ever full sabbatical. I'm going to do it over the summer. I am incredibly nervous about this. I've never done this before, and more specifically, it has been so much work to try to hold this church together, not just me, I mean the staff, the leaders, you being here, that it makes me nervous to go away for an extended period of time. And also, I have learned to do my ministry as your senior minister, as an over-functioning minister trying to hold a church together. So it is important for me and for you that not be a part of the identity of the senior minister. But that's a prediction, that I will go away for 4 months over the summer. I predict the Saints or LSU will win just enough games to get my hopes up. I predict that some of us will get sober. I predict that many in this congregation will continue to experience deep political and cultural divides with our family and our friends. And I predict that many of us will avoid these conversations because they are too painful, and some of us will use this church as a reason to continue to distance ourselves. And still, some of us will have those hard conversations, and they will lead to forgiveness and healing and painful understandings. I predict that I will make a bunch of mistakes. I predict that you will make a bunch of mistakes. I predict that we will spend this whole next year trying to figure out how to make better mistakes together. Will this next year be hard? Yes. Will some of the people that we love die and some of us get life-altering diagnoses these next years? Yes. But every one of us is going to have that year at some point. But that is not today, and that is not a prediction. We are here today. Instead, I predict more good days ahead. I predict a beautiful spring. I predict a miserable summer. I predict a beautiful fall and a pretty good next winter with a week of misery in the winter. That's a prediction. We will continue to rebuild, reform, and to grow. I continue to see people in worship that we have not seen since before the shutdowns. I predict that every Sunday, with the exception of this one, someone will come to this church and to find out, someone will come to this church new, and they will find out that they are loved. Every Sunday, someone will come to this church and find out that they can make it through another week. And every Sunday, one of you will welcome someone new, and that might change their life. Let's sing this next hymn, and we're going to burn soon. I invite you to rise in body or spirit.
It may be one of the hardest things we will ever do. Caught up in our self-righteousness, honing our pain. The one who offended may not deserve forgiveness. and we are not obliged to offer it. Why then should we forgive? Because we all have caused pain, because we all miss the mark, because we can deepen our souls if we forgive, because restoring even one relationship heals many hearts, because we would be forgiven ourselves, because drawing closer to one another builds our communities, because the alternative is endless bitterness, because the world we seek to create is a world filled with forgiveness, because we need not remain caught up in our own self-righteousness and pain. It may be the hardest thing we will ever do. Let us take the first step now.
So earlier in the service, I had asked you to trust your hands to draw something that you will let go of. If you haven't, do it now. Whatever you need to let go of this last year, whatever that thing you've been holding on to, maybe it was a broken vow, maybe it was the failure of yourself or someone you love or someone, whatever it is that you need to let go of, get ready. Whatever is indelibly etched into your soul and will help you to make it through 2023, maybe it is a memory or an ancestor or a recipe, hold on to that with your heart and with your soul and all of your might. Don't let that go. We've been through something very difficult and we have all struggled, and yet we are all here today. We are a joyful, hopeful people. So here is how this is going to work. Reverend Chris and Melanie will light these from our chalice. That is our combined faith and the light of our gathering. And then you will come forward on 2 lines with your paper. Go ahead and light it, but get ready to toss it into the bowl pretty quickly. I now ask you to come forward as we are ready to let go of whatever we need to let go of 2022. Come forward now.
Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise.
As you go out this year, know that this year is better, that you are here and that you exist. Let go of what you need to let go of. Go be at peace. Amen.